Hey everyone, and welcome back to Don't Look Up, where we talk to operators that leverage data to make pretty critical business decisions. And today I'm very excited to have Joe Falcao on our podcast today. Joe has a very esteemed background. Just a few of his roles: he was the director of finance for the international operations of Dunkin' Donuts. He was on the founding team and the former CFO of Thrasio, the aggregator, and also the CFO currently at Orva. But Joe, if you could just take it away and just share a little bit more about your background, that'd be great.
Will, thanks so much for being on the podcast, and I truly appreciate and value everyone who is listening to this podcast. So my journey has been CFO, but much more business partner across different companies and industries. So what I try to do is lean and understand different industries in a way that the CFO can help rethink and transform the company. I had the benefit and the joy of working for great companies in the US, but also was based overseas in Belgium, in Malaysia, and in Brazil. So this gave me a better appreciation of what running the business is from dealing with consumers and dealing with executives in different countries. So I like the science and art of running a business, especially in the capacity of a CFO.
And I mean, the international experience, how has it actually been different to be, in this role in different parts, of the world? Has it been the same? Has it been different? What does that look like?
The end game is the same. Once you're dealing with companies, you want to sell a product to a consumer. You want to get healthy margins. You want to make money, i.e. profits. But the pace of dealing with different departments, different executives is different. When in Europe dealing with our Dutch colleagues, the information was very direct, very objective. Business conduct in Brazil at times can be emotional, and some of the decision processes over lunch or over dinner at the end of the day. That's how you interact. That's how you understand what has to be done. Folks in example in South America are very creative. They like to imagine how can be a transformation for companies. So it has different nuances. If you're in China, for instance, or in Asia Pacific, you build up trust by attending a meeting and having the ritual of the tea. I mean, sipping tea, soft conversation, silence, listening. At the end, it gets back to the essence of how you interact with people, how you build up trust, how they trust you, and how you can have a meaningful business conversation.
And talk to us a little bit more just about the role, that you've taken on and what the responsibilities look like, the different functions you typically work with. How do you think about that role? And also, how has that role really changed depending on the company you've been in from the size that you've joined?
So the mindset I have for the role of a finance executive, so the CFO, is three paradigms. The first one is keeping the lights on, meaning you close the books on time, you make sure the taxes are complied, all the controls are in place, systems, processes, etc. The second one is how you can improve processes, i.e. save time in this journey. And the third one is how you can impact the profit needle, i.e. initially what you said earlier, how you can get data and insights within the organization to be able to drive action and be able to frame a question to other disciplines within the company. That is, and the range of companies I worked for were from global companies, i.e. $5 billion global revenues, to $500 million, to $50 million, to $2 million in the case of Thrasio when I started. The question is how you start understanding the inflection points for growth and be able to work and interact with other departments to be able to think and scale and protect the business.
You actually raised an interesting point. So, I've been in a lot of, I think a similar progression, big company, kind of an investing side, then early stage company, let's say the 2 million size. How do you know when it's too early to put that process in place that you're hampering kind of the growth of the business? Because maybe you're putting in process too early, you're not letting the creativity kind of thrive. How do you think about the balance between when it is the right time to put certain process in place?
Yeah, so the interesting part as a CFO of the company, the tenets of the CFO are the same in any stage of the company. Yeah? In the early stage, one is to balance the degree the CFO is to be hands-on, going to the practical cases of the CFO. Most likely, he or she will have to run a payroll, but also you need to allow the other departments express what you said, their creativity. I may use the word imagination, because what you're doing, you're building up a new company which was not there before. So as finance, you cannot stop their imagination. You need to help them think through, and you need to help them solve for proof points, which can yield to a great business, and try to help them how to resource allocate the proper funds. So it's a very interesting point, because at the end, you're rolling up the sleeves, you're ground zero of enterprise to be. And I try to have this experience in every company I worked for. When I was at Dunkin', I tried to be not in the mainstream. I Dunkin' Northeast, selling coffee in Boston, every corner of the city. I tried to be in the international business where um, the revenue was less than 20% and the profits were less than 20%. Because, well, people want to sip a cup of coffee across the world, and we believe we had a great coffee. Same thing like Coke and Pepsi. Everyone can enjoy this product and be part of the day. Yeah? So as we started imagining this, not to get distracted, but say, well, the consumers in certain geographies may value a cup of coffee. And what we did with analytics is identifying the countries that there was a higher propensity for coffee consumption, i.e. Germany, i.e. Spain, Japan, etc. So then we say, well, this can be our target markets. So let's look at the real estate. That's how we started defining the global expansion of the brand. All starts is listening and enabling other departments, and you provide the data.
Yeah,
You
it was actually
find.
interesting when we were prepping for this call. We talked a little bit about the experience in Dunkin', and mentioned the franchise model, where you're basically helping other operators kind of stand up the Dunkin' Donuts, and they're running it independently. How do you think about managing those, especially internationally? I think you referenced there was a certain point where it kind of breaks the model. There's a certain amount of operators or units someone can have. It'd be great if you could just talk a little bit more about that and how you saw those, again, inflections, and even how people own the brand and operated your brand.
It's a great question, Will. So the thing which I learned in finance, there are two words that help me think through. One is complexity, and how we drive from complexity to simplicity. And the second one are inflection points. And the third one, if I may add, is a network. So in case of Dunkin' Donuts in the US, I'll go back to international. Dunkin' sells coffee, sells bagels, other products, and different day parts. But what Dunkin' sells is a pattern of cash flow by different zip codes or geographies. That someone wants to invest their personal funds to run that business and fulfill a dream of owning a business. The 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 point of running a Dunkin' is how you build up a network, because there are critical roles in this network. You need a kitchen to produce the donuts, or you can buy, or you can buy the donuts, or you can have the kitchen. You need a network. You need a general manager. You need key employees, so the lights are on for the customers to go and buy. The customer does not know if they're buying from Will's Dunkin' store or Joe's Dunkin' store. They go there. They want to be out in 2 minutes with a nice cup of hot French vanilla or iced French vanilla coffee and a bagel. So you need to provide the same experience. So how you construct this network, and how you're profitable, and how you know how much donuts to build in different flavors. There's a lot of data science behind that. One of the things for the customers, they want to go to a store. In case of Dunkin', they want to look at the display, and they want to see it full with different donuts, different. So the decision of buying is like what you're seeing and feeling. So one of the things we used to talk at Dunkin' is the store at night had to have the same shelf expression as in the morning, means full, because a customer wants to go to a store that he can feel the joy of buying. Let's call it a donut. So in the case of Dunkin' Donuts is a pattern of cash flow, how you can manage this network that you're building up, one store, 10 stores, etc. the 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 inflection points of growth and how you can simplify the processes. In terms of simplification, I was one of the things before I say that I like attempts to learn from outside the discipline, outside the finance discipline. I lean a lot on how operations run of factories because I can adapt that to the factor of finance, which is producing numbers and producing financial reports, and also looking at hospitals. So in hospital, if you go to a hospital, it has tremendous complexity. A patient goes there, you don't know what's going on. You have different doctors, different rooms, etc. So they have the way they master this. They have a checklist. Like the way a plane takes off, there's a checklist. The way you go to a hospital, there's a checklist. So what I try to do in every company is creating checklists to simplify the how an operation is run and how the next employee that I hire can learn the process. Because everyone wants to join a company to succeed. So how to help them and simplifying the knowledge on this checklist. So Dunkin' Donuts, going back to example, they have a checklist how to open a store in the morning, how to run a store during the day, and how to close a store then. And all the elements from 4 times a day you go to and clean up the tables. You make sure it's clean. Someone is checking the restrooms, etc., etc. So any company, any stage, if they can master the art of simplifying to checklist, that gives them so much capacity of people and brain power that they can imagine how to grow the business.
It's really interesting. I mean, I feel like the SOP, is so important for scaling any business, and that checklist. Did you end up automating that checklist in a way where you can track that checklist, or did it start pen and paper? How did that, develop, over time as you roll those out?
Yeah, attempts an SOP is a beautiful document. It can have 10 pages. And what I realized, it's a good library of SOPs to have, but people tend not to read. They read one pages. Everything that you can distill into one page, and that's very tough because you have to distill into one page summaries. So at times, once I realized carrying knowledge on my shoulder was very tough, so I decided to write checklists to help me. Then I shared that with everyone else. So it's like what we see at times on LinkedIn or other social medias, infographics is a similar notion of distilling information in one page.
Did you automate that, basically electronically so that you can track that as like a finance department or operations department as well and see are people actually completing these checklists?
Correct.
And let's say, did they complete the checklist? Then maybe this unit is actually operating better from a profitability or cash flow margin. Like how do you kind of connect those two together in the end?
The cost of running finance goes down because you simplify it, you remove the complexity of running. You don't need an incremental head to run manual processes. Because the evolution of any company starts with complexity. You have manual steps, you have people, then you need to balance people and technology. So this helps understand what you can move to leverage technology. And there's a lot of talk about AI, but you need to train the machine to do a certain task or provide certain insights. So if you go to ChatGPT, you're training them all to think. So how you train them all to think? Because you know the discipline, you know the subject matter. So it's the same knowledge path of a checklist that you can use. So many companies may not have the benefit of going full-blown AI, but they can still have a one page of a checklist. So my hypothetical, my grandfather, when he had a business, he had a checklist of what to do. This keeps a discipline.
Definitely. And what was your favorite donut, by the way, if you had one?
Glazed donuts. Glazed
Glazed
donuts.
donuts. Okay.
Yeah.
I was a
So there
strawberry
was
strawberry
yeah.
frosted from Dunkin'.
Yeah, so the Dunkin' did something very. They suspend a week at the store working. I asked to work to receive the cash and prepare the coffee and be standing for a couple of hours because after that I had a better appreciation of the store employees. So this walking boots on the ground and understand. So when we were in the corporate office, beautiful slides, making decisions. I could visualize how the employees will react, and so try to for us to make the right decision for the employees, for the franchisees, and for the corporate office.
That's great. I mean, it's a mix of the qualitative and quantitative there, and appreciating that culture. So kind of changing gears, I know it's a sensitive topic, so we're not going to go too deep, but with the Thrasio kind of news of happening and that whole journey that you went through, it would be just really interesting to hear your perspective on, how did you even, come to the opportunity with Thrasio, and what that looked like, and how that journey developed as you grew, from the fifth employee to, the scale that you reached just a few years later. I think it was 1,000+ employees, that you had scaled to. So if you don't mind talking just a little bit about that experience.
Absolutely. It's a great journey in that experience at Thrasio. It connected the dots of different companies, consumer technology ones I'd worked for. The thing which I enjoy about Thrasio, the journey, and very grateful, is we, especially the founders, had envisioned a new asset class, which Amazon sellers, and making sure we leverage the creativity of folks starting a business and taking to a certain level, then selling it to the Thrasio and other aggregators. So it's a reverse model as finding new products. It's a different funnel of that, but creating an asset class, meaning you buy it X and you can sell it Y. The vision that Thrasio had was copied by other private equity firms that funded other companies worldwide. My sense there are about 60 to 70 companies. It's a normal evolution of correction, of consolidation. So my sense is there may be aggregator 2.0 in this space, because the consumers are buying online. They like the convenience of buying online. That has not changed. The COVID gave us a sense of valuing time compared to before. Before, personally, I used to go to the mall to buy something, and I didn't quite realize I was spending 3 hours driving, parking, going to buy a pair of sneakers. What Amazon and the third-party sellers are doing, or in Walmart, etc., you have the convenience of buying literally at times on the go at the traffic stoplight. I mean, that can be the extreme, and the next day or 2 days later you're getting something that you ordered. So the market is there. Is the question how we solve for that. The thing which this journey of being in any startup like Thrasio is the team effort, the collaboration which is there is fantastic. It's like climbing a mountain in Africa or in Asia. It's unique experience. I think it's one of the life journeys that everyone needs to have. When you're starting a company, you look at the tailwinds that benefit you. COVID might have benefit, but there are many headwinds that come and can make this organism of the company fragile, i.e. interest rates increasing, Amazon fees increasing, supply chain bottlenecks. So I tend to be optimistic. I'm optimistic that Thrasio and the key players will come back. So I think there's a need and there's a space for that. My last point, the likes of these aggregators is beneficial for Amazon, because it's a way the sellers can monetize, and this system gets very vibrant. So that's my personal view of this journey. But overall, any startup provides, it stretches you as a human person to the unknown, which is great, though. Different muscles to be developed.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, I mean, in the period, I had gone through the aggregator journey as well, just on a lot smaller scale in the direct-to-consumer space. And it really felt like one of the biggest challenges was the capital structure, right, in the end, which is how do you, take a lot of these businesses that could be generating, a good margin, maybe a good EBITDA margin at times, but they have such substantial working capital requirements. I know you mentioned the inventory, and supply chain shortages. How do you actually get the product to the customer? How do you think about, marketing, of course, and the payback periods for that? And that's what we talk a lot of operators about on this podcast right now, which is how do you make decisions, right, with a lot of these complexities. So how do you even think, in reflecting on that experience, about scaling an e-commerce business, even if it was one, multiple, many, how do you think about, even for people that are listening, how do you think about that complexity in running your business?
A few years ago, when I was working for a chemical company, the complexity we were dealing with the number of SKUs we had in a warehouse. When I was fully immersed into e-commerce, the complexity is has many facets. One is the number of SKUs one is selling, or ASINs when you list on Amazon. The second one is the lead time, the supply chain for each one of these items to get, because Amazon will penalize you if the SKU is not, if the customer wants to buy Amazon PPC is getting expensive. So my suggestion for someone who's starting a business, if they don't have resources and technology, is to start with very few SKUs that they control. And then start dialing and try to understand the supply chain and the cash flow which you put in the supply chain and the marketing spend. Because very easily, if you're preparing for the holidays, you can be, if a company is like $5 million top line, you can be spending like $600,000 to get the inventory in Amazon, prepayment, get inventory to the US, clearing, and just waiting and hoping for the holiday season. So that's the one that's the biggest challenge, is the how to get access to capital.
And being in the CFO suite, we talked to a lot of marketers, a lot of growth marketers as well. And I think one of the common themes is, I think the more successful growth marketers are the ones who can really communicate with the finance team, pretty directly, and the operations team. So how do you think about fostering that collaboration amongst these core teams? And I think secondarily, I feel like your life probably lives in the P&L, the cash flow statement, balance sheet. You're thinking about these, point in time, potentially financial statements. Then how do you marry that to the dynamic nature of the marketing, let's say, suite, which is, daily reads, budgets, everything else that are very dynamic. So how do you kind of combine those two together to come up with a really cohesive strategy?
So there are a couple of things. One of them is just walking and this meeting the folks from marketing and ops and supply chain, understanding through their lenses what they're going through. At times there are constraints you cannot solve. So then you can think overall holistically for the company how to deploy the cash flow. So one of the practical things is marketing. They're driving. I mean, you have to connect marketing and supply chain and operations and pricing, because you need the inventory to be able to market and to be able to price. So how to get these three functions together. And once you get the products and you price it properly, you can see the traction of sales. You can look at the sales velocity, and you can look at the margins, and you look at the cash in a week or 2 weeks when Amazon pays you. So it's just getting this. I mean, the thing which I found in e-commerce, it brings these four disciplines together, compared to other companies where it was like it was analog, and e-commerce is much more tight digital process. So you have to be in lockstep. Not always the CFO, but someone within the CFO team has to be in lockstep. So,
what role does data play? In that, in the sense of, how do you even extract that data? What tools potentially do you use to help you kind of facilitate the analysis of that data in your life, especially in the e-commerce space? How do you think about that?
So the data is the honest broker. So you can look at the patterns, and you can drive decisions, and you can follow up on previous decisions and have a postmortem. You don't need to do everything right, but you need to understand where you made a mistake, because then you have a feedback loop. You can feed forward the lessons. The data can start from downloading the Amazon transactions, downloading the advertisement spend, and looking at least in Excel certain patterns. And once the habit is there, you can move to much more sophisticated tools using business intelligence, Tableau, or Power BI. But you need to start exercising the art of less emotions and a bit more looking at the data and the patterns of behavior. Certain benchmarks, or of year over year, week over week, going back to my days at Dunkin', every morning we used to wake up and we knew the sales, comparable store sales, meaning stores open last year and this year, Dunkin', Baskin, how they were performing week over week. So we knew, like the stock market, real time, what's happening. So it gives a sense of the pulse of this organism, but we need to digest the leading indicators, the drivers, and have someone on point for action. One other thing is, as you scale a company, people will look at data. It's okay if someone pushes and there's a healthy conflict, because that's how you're opening up the conversation. If everyone agrees, it means no one is at their full potential.
And I mean, you mentioned leading indicators. What are some of the core? We talk about North Star KPIs with a lot of operators here. What would you say are the most important kind of North Star KPIs that you've seen, in your experience for e-commerce businesses?
It's like customer traffic, like what's driving customer traffic based on the keywords and the conversion rate. Try to understand that. Try to understand the sensitivity of the customer of putting something in the shopping cart and not buying. Try to understand the zip code where the customer is. We do not know the customer in e-commerce, but we may know the zip code. And there may be a correlation between certain events happening or weather or some of the events happening and why they're buying. If there are any spikes in pattern or positive or negative, understand what happened. Not just take the face value of overall US perform X or Y, but try to get understanding of those details. And the details matter because you can minimize, optimize the different pattern of shipments to the Amazon warehouses. That's one of them. Getting a ROI on the advertisement spend. What else? Each one of the P&L drivers, if you slice the margin differently, like cost to acquire the product, cost to ship the product, cost for the Amazon fees, any long-term storage one may have, cost to advertisement, then you get the true contribution margin of the business, then you add the people expenses, then you get a sense of the EBITDA of the business.
And where did I mean, if you were to kind of now look at it, and talk to, maybe it's a brand that's operating on Amazon, it could be a single operating brand on Amazon. Where would you say are the most, interesting opportunities to look for efficiency? Where would you say, hey, here's some areas that you should take a look? Usually, you've seen across all the businesses that you've seen have the most opportunity to become more efficient.
Yeah, so one of the things is looking at the thresholds of cost of goods sold and marketing spend. So cost of goods sold, anything south between 15 and 20%. It's ideal if it's less than that, and if you can yield a higher AOR, that's better, but on average, that's a number. At times, you have to look at combined with marketing because that's what you're driving the margins. Look at look in detail the Amazon transaction reports and see any inefficiencies one may have there. Inefficiency meaning a product is there for more than 6 months, they're paying long-term storage fees. So what can you do in terms of pricing? So the beauty of e-commerce, details matter, and you need to look, or you need a process to look every day to the long tail of the business. You cannot be complacent.
So I think one of the bigger themes is this view of omnichannel sales, omnichannel strategies. Amazon being one of the pillars of that, but direct to consumer, even wholesale and retail, offline sales. How do you think about that balance? Do you think that is the inevitable path for most brands? Do you think they can be single channel? What is your view on that omnichannel view?
The brand needs to reach to the customer through different ways how the customer is buying. So Amazon has the big market share. Walmart is increasing. Walmart, I think, is roughly 20% of what Amazon is. And there's a lot of focus on Walmart. And one of the benefits Walmart has is that they have the brick and mortar stores and they have e-commerce now. So they can play it very well with these two locations from a logistics and from a customer experience. different demographics are consuming, buying through different social media uh, outlets, TikTok and Temu. So so commerce is happening everywhere. There's a social or digital encounter. So this is getting back to the days of many years ago of the villages, where when people have a concentration and you put a small kiosk to sell drinks or food, etc. So these small kiosks are happening where there's a social encounter of people, and this is happening in a very dynamic manner. So I may say, well, if I need to buy something, I go to Amazon. My younger kids may say, well, let me check on TikTok what's trendy and let me buy from there. Both of them will use my own credit card, but it's a different outlet to buy things.
That makes sense. And I know we're basically wrapping up on time, but what would be really interesting, we typically like to end with is, just understanding from you, what are some maybe suggestions you have for others in the space of how they could just think about becoming data driven? What are some other tactics that you think are useful to kind of walk away with for some operators out there?
Um, so my point is try to understand which are the leading indicators of your own business and try to plot them. I'll start the exercise using Excel, plotting a graph or trend, and try to understand the cause effect. The second one is try to understand which other outlets you're not part of and how they're behaving, and try to get experience and knowledge from different disciplines. Like I try to get knowledge from the hospitals, checklist, or try to get disciplines from manufacturing. Manufacturing talks a lot about Six Sigma optimization, so why not that for the finance professional? So there's a lot of ways to learn, and I think one last one I need to be fair and just is listening to your podcast as well. There's a great body of knowledge you can learn.
Well, thank you for that. I'll plus one on that one. And I agree with you on the different disciplines. I think the most important one to me has been psychology, really, in the end. In the end, the consumers are people. They have thoughts, decisions. Building businesses are also, a bunch of people trying to build, interesting processes, help execute. So I think psychology has been one of the most impactful for me, at the very least. But overall, Joe, it's been a pleasure to have you on.
It's a
If
pleasure.
also
Thank you so
anyone
much.
could go find you, where's the best place? Is there a contact? Is LinkedIn? How can someone come find you if they want to ask more questions?
Uh, I'm open. They can find me on LinkedIn or they can reach out to you on like A or B options. I'm willing to help and mentor folks. It's part of paying it forward.
Great. Well, Joe, thanks again, and look forward to potentially having you back on a next series.
Thanks so much. It was a pleasure. Thanks so much.